EVO.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 173, A Modern-Day Cain and Abel. It was early in the morning, just before dawn when night hasn't quite let up yet, and Katie was about to have a rude awakening. She was jolted from a deep sleep by her father in their New Jersey home. It was dark, but she could hear the panic in her father's voice, telling her to wake up, that the house was on fire. Now, Katie was an adult, and her younger sister, Marissa, both of them in their mid-20s, still lived at home with their parents, Paul and Susan, in their Ocean Township home. Very quickly, Katie, Marissa, and their mother, Susan, fled with the dogs. Once they were outside, standing in their nightclothes, barefooted in the November chill, they could only helplessly watch as toxic smoke billowed out of the two-story home. It was then, at 4:58 a.m., that Katie dialed 911. Meantime, as all this chaos is going on, she watched the garage doors open and her father behind the wheel of her mother's white Porsche Cayenne. He backs out of the driveway with the car, then parked it across the street from the family's home. And he beckons his daughters, wife, and dogs inside, no doubt blasting the heat so they could be warm because it was a freezing morning and their house was on fire. And yet, in that safe harbor, I imagine that their spiked adrenaline subsided just a bit, knowing that they had all kept their heads and their dad had gotten in the car and led them to a safe place as they waited for first responders to arrive, which wasn't long on that chilly November 20th of 2018, because in just a couple minutes, both police and firefighters arrived to 27 Tilton Drive to the home of Paul Caneiro. In all the chaos, Katie made sure to call her Uncle Keith to tell him about the fire. So Keith was a year younger than her 51-year-old father, Paul, and he lived about 20 minutes away in the more exclusive Colts Neck Township. But he didn't pick up, and when she tried his wife, Jennifer, she didn't either. So her third call was to her other uncle, Corey, who did pick up, and she let him know that their house was on fire and that he was needed. So, of course, he drove out right away from Fairhaven, which was about 25 minutes away, to lend his support. You see, the Caneiro brothers were close, especially Paul and Keith. Not only did they spend all their holidays together, birthdays and vacations, but the brothers were also business partners, had been for decades. Together, they'd built two successful companies. Square One was a technology consulting firm, and EcoStar was a pest control company. Keith was the visionary. He was the CEO and lead developer for the tech business, but Paul managed the day-to-day operations and finances. But back to the fire, because not long after the firefighters arrived, Paul and his family got out of Susan's Porsche and stood outside in the street as first responders battled the blaze. A neighbor recalled coming by and speaking to Paul, who at the time was emotional.
I walked down, and I spoke to him and the girls, and I asked them, how they were doing, and Paul was a little nervous, he was kind of upset, which I kind of thought was just the fire, and he remarked to me that he was scared that he almost lost his wife with the fire.
Paul and his family also were on standby to help firefighters figure out what had happened. Here's body cam footage from a first responder who goes up to Paul and his daughter as they stand next to the fire truck and ask about their home security camera.
Sir, it's your house? Yes. Where is all the DVD stuff for the cameras and everything in the house? It's in the garage. In the garage? Yeah. Where in the garage at?
Walk in the garage and it's all the way up top to the left.
Up to the left? Do you have them running right now?
I've been having problems with stuff in the garage.
You've been
The audio is pretty rough. But basically, Paul says the security camera in the garage hasn't been working properly. And there would be other questions. The fire marshal was on hand, and he asked Paul about the number of gas cans he had at his home and where they were.
Did you ask him if he was aware of the gas can by the garage?
I did.
What was his response?
He said he was not aware of the gas can.
Did you ask him if he owned any gas cans?
I did.
What was his response?
I had 5 or 6.
Did he say where?
The shed.
Did you ask him anything else about the shed?
I asked him when the last time he was in the shed, and he couldn't remember.
The fire marshal also basically asked Paul what was his timeline the night of the fire. Paul basically had gone to bed early. His adult daughters had watched a movie with their mother, and then everybody was in bed by 10 or 11-ish, just a regular Monday night.
I went to bed around 6, upstairs in the spare bedroom. About 11 o'clock, he came down to take up some medicine, and he went back upstairs. At some point during that night, he came back downstairs to work on the computer, and then he went back upstairs. I said he woke up to the smoke alarms, and he ran to the master bedroom to get his wife, and then the other bedrooms to get the girls out. And they all went downstairs out the garage.
Even so, the fire marshal noticed a particularly painful-looking puncture wound on the back of Paul's hand, and he asked him about it.
I was told that he burned his hands. So I asked, he burned your hands? He just said no. I hit him on the door when he was going through the front door.
What specifically did Mr. Caneiro say to you about his hand?
He said he hit his hand on the front door.
I'm sorry?
When he was walking through.
Okay.
The thing is, after the flames had been extinguished, there was evidence pointing toward arson, and that whoever had set the fire, it seemed like based on physical evidence, it was someone close to home. A red gas can had been found in the driveway by a white Porsche Macan. Now, both Paul and his wife drove white Porsches. Hers was a Cayenne and his was a Macan. So Paul's Porsche was in the driveway, and it had burn spots on the hood. Investigators also recovered a charred rubber glove on the ground in front of Paul's car. A storage shed in the backyard had 3 gas cans. But in the placement of the cans, there was a clue. Because 2 of the gas cans were side by side, and then there was a space separating them from a 3rd gas can, which indicated that a 4th can had been there and was now gone. They believed that that 4th can was the one that was found in the driveway. And then there were rubber gloves that were also located inside and outside the shed. And then there were lighters that were found within the home at the origin points of the fire. And then there was the presence of unknown combustible liquids. So obviously investigators wanted to talk more with Paul and his family, and they were asked to come down to the station and be voluntarily interviewed, which they did. They drove together in Susan's white Porsche and were basically seated and told to wait to be interviewed. What the family didn't know as they waited was about 20 miles away in the same county, but in a much more exclusive neighborhood, the more affluent township of Long Neck, a resident, a plastic surgeon named Boris, was about to call 911 and report another house fire. So around lunchtime, Boris had just left his house, and he was on his way to an appointment when he got a call from his gardener.
The landscaper was concerned that somebody, most likely Keith, was burning leaves in the back of the barrel behind the house, and he was concerned that he was going to get fined by the township. He tried to reach him. He couldn't, and asked me to see if I can help. And so I made phone calls to Jen and Keith. Nobody responded. So I turned around because I was nearby and decided to see if I can see what's going on.
So, being a good neighbor, Boris turned his truck around and drives back through the neighborhood and then down the long driveway of his neighbor's 10-acre property, a sprawling white mansion at 15 Willowbrook Drive.
There was nothing unusual in the front of the house. I just saw barely a little smoke coming from the back of the house.
So he walked around to the back of the house.
I expected to see Keith in a big barrel of burning leaves. There was nobody there, and the smoke was coming not from the barrel, but coming from underneath the balcony, underneath the house.
Now, Boris was neighbors with Keith, who had an 8-year-old daughter named Sophia.
The house has main doors, and they usually were locked. When I brought my daughter to play, because Sophia and my daughter were playing quite a bit together, I would take my daughter through this service door, which was on the right of the main entrance, which was usually open. There was very thick clouds of smoke coming from the inside. I yelled to see if anybody was inside. Nobody responded. The clouds were so thick I couldn't even enter. So I went back to my car and called 911.
But as Boris was getting into his truck to call 911, he noticed something in the bushes.
I have a truck, so I was getting up on the step, and as I turned, I saw a body in front of the house, in the bushes.
A horrified Boris dialed 911.
I didn't hear your name or what you're reporting, sir. What are you reporting?
Okay, fire.
Where?
Willowbrook Lane, Willowbrook Road.
What's the address? What's on fire?
The house.
Where do you see flames coming from?
I see the smoke from behind. I thought that's my neighbors from behind me. I opened the door, and there is a smoke's coming out, and there's a person laying down.
Where are they laying down?
On the property.
Can you get over
In
to
front
them?
of the house.
All right, get over
Yes,
to them.
I'm coming over.
Okay.
Oh my God, there's blood here. It's a corpse.
It's what?
It's dead.
What's dead?
There's somebody is dead here.
Okay, sir, you need to get to a safe area. Hold on a second. Sir, are you getting into a safe area?
I'm leaving the property.
What is the house number? Are you able to see it on your way?
Let me get to the parking. Let me get to the. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. It's I'm sorry. It's 15.
Okay, it is number 15. Okay. Give me your name again, sir.
All right, it's 15. Get over there, and I see the body on the premises.
Yes, I told them. Just keep everybody away from that, okay? What is your name, sir?
All right, and I am at 2 Evergreen Lane.
Okay,
I'm right behind them.
and what's your house number on Evergreen?
Okay, listen, I really don't have time. I'm sorry. I have time to get on the property. Please send somebody.
They're already en route.
It was exactly 12:41 p.m. when an alarm erupted at the fire station. It was coded as a structure fire with entrapment. What that meant was that there could be multiple victims inside, and first responders were told that there could be children in the house. By 12:55, the first fire truck pulled into the driveway of 15 Willowbrook Drive, and by then the white mansion was engulfed in flames. Here, firefighter Carmelo Lamarck describes entering the house. There was zero visibility, but he was trained to find victims in blackout conditions by feeling his way. However, no amount of training can prepare a person to find the body of a child. Remember, the neighbor Boris mentioned that his daughter often had playdates with his next-door neighbor's daughter, 8-year-old Sophia.
How did you come in contact with the victim? I mean, as far as visibility goes.
I felt her.
Were you with anyone else at that point in time, like right in front of you?
Yes, there were 2 firefighters that had made their way up past me onto the 2nd floor, and there were another 3 behind me. After it was determined that it was in fact the victim, I turned to the firefighter that was just below me on the stairs, and I told him that we're going to be taking them out. I grabbed the legs, and he grabbed her arms, and we carried her out.
Where did you take her?
Just by the garage doors.
In front of the house?
Yes.
After you did that, did you ultimately continue with efforts to find other individuals and or fire?
Yes, we were instructed to place her down in the driveway and then to go back in and continue our search.
That day, they would also recover Keith's 11-year-old son, Jesse, in the kitchen, and his wife, the children's mother, Jennifer, on the stairs leading to the basement. And the body that Boris, Keith's neighbor, had discovered in the bushes was in fact Keith Caneiro. This is the same Keith who was the brother of Paul Caneiro, the family man who only hours before had saved his wife and adult daughters from a house fire 20 miles away. What was going on here? Were these families being targeted? Fortunately, Paul and his family had escaped their home fire unharmed, but the fire at Keith's mansion was vastly different, but not for the reasons that you might imagine, or anyone could imagine, because the following day, investigators announced that Keith and his family were victims of homicide. Keith had been shot dead in his yard, and it had been overkill. He'd been shot once in the lower back and 4 times in the head. 45-year-old Jennifer Caneiro had been found inside the home on the first-floor stairs that led to the basement. She'd been stabbed multiple times in her torso and shot in the head. 11-year-old Jesse was found in the kitchen on the floor, stabbed multiple times. And little 8-year-old Sophia was found on the landing of the stairs between the first and second floors. She too had been stabbed multiple times. These murders were shocking. But 4 days later, Paul Caneiro would be charged with the arson fire at his home. And a few days after that, he would be charged with 4 counts of homicide in the deaths of his brother, Keith, his wife, Jennifer, and their 2 children. Here is the jaw-dropping announcement of those charges in a Monmouth County press conference.
Specifically, we allege that the defendant repeatedly shot and killed his brother while he was outside of the side of his home, and then moved to murder the rest of the family inside the home. We allege that Jennifer was shot and stabbed, and the 2 Caneiro children were repeatedly stabbed by knife. We also allege that after murdering the Caneiro family, the defendant then set fire to the house at 15 Willowbrook in Colts Neck in an effort to conceal and disguise his earlier committed crimes.
Paul Caneiro pleaded not guilty to all charges, and it would take more than 7 years for his murder trial to begin, which it did in January of 2026. Prosecutors alleged that Paul had set fires to 2 homes, his own and his brother's 20 miles away in Colt Neck. It was believed that the fires were diversions in an attempt to mislead investigators and to try to make it appear that the entire Caneiro family was under attack, but also to mask his true motivation, which was to murder his brother, Keith, as well as his family because of jealousy and that he was drowning in debt, and that, basically, Keith and his family were worth more to him dead than alive. And the evidence against Paul Caneiro was damning, both physical and circumstantial. Now, if you'll recall, the family had driven Paul's wife's Porsche to the police station that day after their house fire. But while they were waiting to be interviewed, investigators had gotten a warrant to search that vehicle. And in the hatchback, they found a backpack that had a gun barrel, a silencer, and a knife.
You remember Susan's Porsche Cayenne, the car that the defendant backed out of the driveway and that the family sat in and ultimately drove to headquarters. Well, at headquarters, that vehicle was searched. And in the back of that vehicle, in the rear cargo area, officers located a backpack. And inside of that backpack were numerous items belonging to the defendant. His bank cards, his credit cards, his laptop, pieces of his mail, his daughter's savings bonds, his passport, and also the barrel of a 9mm handgun and a gun silencer. Now, in the defendant's basement, there was a metal locker, and located in that metal locker was a gun. It was a 9mm Sig Sauer. That gun, as well as the barrel and the silencer, were sent out to the New Jersey State Police Ballistics Unit for testing. Those conclusions included a finding that bullets and shell casings from 15 Willowbrook Road came from that barrel in his backpack and from the gun in his basement.
And there was more physical evidence. On November 23rd, so 3 days after the murders, investigators scoured Paul's home at Tilton Drive in Ocean, New Jersey. They brought in a cadaver dog, a canine named Creed, who had alerted to the presence of blood in the basement near where that fire had been started. And in this area, they found a plastic container. Inside of it, they found clothing, which included a pair of jeans and a latex glove with red stains consistent with blood. These items were taken to the New Jersey Crime Lab, and in the fold of the clothing, they found an unspent projectile. This casing was identified as ammunition that was consistent with ammunition found inside the home of Paul Caneiro, as well as the spent projectile casings located near his brother Keith's body, who'd been found in the yard.
There was this pile of charred items and articles all congealed together that was located right beneath the window well where the fire was started in the defendant's basement. In that pile was a pair of men's jeans with blood staining in multiple areas. Folded up in those jeans were 6 black nitrile gloves and 1 live round of ammunition. Same type of ammunition and head stamp that was found at 15 Willowbrook Road. Those jeans and those gloves, as well as numerous other items, were sent out for DNA testing. You are going to have the opportunity to hear from the forensic DNA scientists who performed that testing. And they are going to tell you about their conclusions and findings for each and every piece of evidence that they tested. And what you're going to learn is that those findings, those results, included a finding that these sources of DNA located on multiple areas of those bloody jeans in the defendant's basement came from none other than his niece, Sophia Caneiro, and in one area from his nephew, Jesse Caneiro. You're also going to learn that Sophia Caneiro's DNA was on some of those black nitrile gloves as well as other items in that pile.
Investigators also spoke with Paul and Keith's little brother, Corey Caneiro, who, after the murders, shared a damning email with detectives that on November 19th at 6:58 p.m., just hours before the murders, his brother Keith had forwarded him an email that he'd sent to 2 business associates. Now, this email detailed that he believed that Paul had stolen money from the business and that until he figured out where this money was, he was going to stop payment to Paul's wife, who was on the payroll, as well as their health insurance. Remember, the brothers owned 2 businesses together. They were equal partners in their extermination business. However, the tech company, Square One, Keith owned 90% of that, and Paul just a paltry 10%. And Square One, that business, that was the moneymaker, or at least it had been. But over the years, the business had dwindled to just one big client, which represented 90% of the income. And Keith didn't believe that the contract with that company was going to be renewed. Add to that, Paul had been deemed disabled because of a car accident, and his salary was being paid to his wife because he was getting disability payments. Here's the brothers' business accountant talking about Paul's financial situation.
Now, to your knowledge, what if any other sources of income did Mr. Caneiro, Paul Caneiro, receive?
Well, outside of the company, eventually he was receiving disability.
Okay, when you say disability, do you know what he was collecting from, what policies?
Yeah, first it was Social Security, I believe, and then Sun Life.
What is Sun Life?
A insurance company. So
okay. Was that a group policy, an individual or something?
No, it was an individual policy.
So Paul had borrowed money against his 401k, and he also owed back taxes to the tune of around $80,000. And in April 2018, Keith realized that there were these missing payments to his life insurance policy. And so he talked to his insurance agent.
Keith had contacted me inquiring he had gotten a statement showing that there was a loan against the Canon Life policy. He didn't understand the policy, so he contacted me to ask me what that meant. What is why would there be a loan against this policy?
And did you explain?
And I said, based on what I see here, there's either the money was taken out for whatever reason you would take it out, or there's also in a whole life insurance policy what's called automotive premium loan. So to prevent the policy from lapsing, if there's this substantial cash value in a policy, they'll take a loan against the policy automatically to make sure the policy doesn't lapse and pay the premium.
It's complicated, but basically Keith had set up a family trust and made Paul his trustee. Keith would put tens of thousands of dollars into that account for Paul to pay the quarterly life insurance premiums with. So in April of 2019, the spring before the murders, Keith confronted Paul, who basically is like, oops, I accidentally paid myself tens of thousands of dollars from this account, but I'll put it back. And Keith believed that he would. And because Paul was the trustee, Keith didn't have the login or passwords to that account. And he just trusted his brother was telling him the truth. But keeping this life insurance current was important to him because it was a $3 million policy. So back to the other financial pressures. I had mentioned that the major moneymaker for the brothers was their tech firm, Square One, and that their client list had dwindled to one major company, the Duke Foundation, which accounted for 90% of the company's business. And Keith was always looking to the future, and he was stressed out by all these problems with his brother and in anticipation that things were going to change. Keith went back to school to get his master's degree, which he completed in 2017, because his ultimate plan was to sell both of the businesses and, according to his insurance broker, get a job at a large corporation.
Do you know why he went back to school to get his master's degree?
Yeah, he was looking to sell J. Martin and EchoStar and move into a CIO position with the corporation.
Did he have any specific corporation in mind, or was this just...
Not to my knowledge.
And it sounds like Keith's ultimate plan was on track. The brothers had actually received an offer of $850,000 from a larger pest control company to buy out the business that he and Paul owned 50-50. Now, Keith wanted to accept the offer, but according to their accountant, Paul, not so much.
I think Paul wanted to hold off because he felt we could do better than the 850.
Because this is where Paul's house of cards was folding. Keith had found out that not only had Paul not accidentally taken away money from the trust, but that he'd been taking even more in the months after Keith had confronted him. He hadn't been paying Keith's life insurance premiums. And on top of that, the businesses were what paid his wife's salary, their health insurance, and paid for their expensive cars. Here's the brothers' business accountant.
When was the last time you spoke to Keith Caneiro?
It was, I believe, the Tuesday night before his death.
Would it have been November 19th?
Yes.
How did you speak to him?
He would email me, we spoke by phone. We must have spoken at least 3 times on the phone that afternoon into the evening.
What was just the general topic of the conversation?
Very upset. Just wanted to do something about it.
When you say upset, what specifically about? What was
that money wasn't going to pay his life insurance again, and he was pretty upset about that.
Now, what, if anything, did you tell Keith during that conversation?
I tried to calm him down, and I tried to tell him it was late. It was like 7 o'clock in the evening. I said, let's, we'll get in touch with TD Bank tomorrow to see what's going on.
Did you ever speak with Keith again?
I spoke to him again.
Okay, why not?
He was murdered.
The night before the murders, Keith confronted Paul about the missing money, how he was going to cut Paul out of their businesses.
That in the time leading up to the murders, the defendant's financial situation was, for lack of a better term, delicate. It was essentially a house of cards. What you're going to see is that while he made a lot of money, he also spent a lot of money. He had a lot of fixed expenses, a lot of debt, and he was having a hard time just keeping up. What you're going to learn is that the defendant had 3 main or steady streams of income that he would receive in 2017 and 2018. His first stream of revenue came from income that he and his family would receive through payroll from the businesses. Now, he and his family also received their auto reimbursement through the businesses, as well as their health insurance. His second stream of revenue came from insurance disability payments that he would collect. And you're going to learn he collected from a couple of different policies. And the defendant's third source of revenue came from money that he would periodically take from the Keith Caneiro Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust bank account. These were the defendant's three main or steady streams of income for those years, and perhaps most importantly, income that he relied on. And what you're going to see is that even with his income, he still had a hard time keeping up with his bills, his expenses, his lifestyle.
Not only was Keith livid with his brother, but he was moving on from him. According to his insurance broker, he pretty much told him so that day.
We had a conversation in regards to what he was trying to accomplish, and his hope was that he was going to move on private industry and go into the commercial business, looking for a job as a chief information officer for a company. So my wife was vice president at the time by Prudential in the technology field, so I offered to share his resume with her, and that's why he sent it.
The night before Keith was murdered, he'd sent his resume out to a big company, just like he'd planned. He'd also called Paul and let him know that he was onto his theft and that he needed the login and password to his trust account so he could see where the money was going and why his life insurance premiums hadn't been paid.
You see, Square One, the more profitable business that Keith owned 90% of, that had only one major client left, and that it received about 90% of its revenue from that client. That client's contract was set to expire and would likely not renew. Now, Keith had planned for this. He had foreseen this coming for some time, and Keith had a plan for his and his family's future financial well-being, and he communicated this plan to the defendant. Keith's plan involved, if Square One were to dissolve, his plan involved selling EcoStar, the business that they owned 50-50, and using his half of the proceeds from that sale, along with potentially borrowing money from his life insurance trust and or 401k to pay down his mortgage. He wanted to get a job in the marketplace and be done with the defendant, at least in terms of their financial relationship. Now, the thing about Keith's plan is that had it come to fruition, it would have had some negative consequences on the defendant's already delicate financial situation. For starters, he would lose his first steady stream of income, that being payroll that he and his family received through the businesses, not to mention their health insurance and their auto reimbursement. But secondly, you're going to learn that unlike Keith, the defendant would not have as easily been able to replace that income simply by getting a job in the marketplace because of his disability payments. Now, the second point of contention, and what really compounded the situation, came down to the defendant's third source of revenue, the Keith Caneiro Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust.
And he could also be facing prison time if his brother Keith reported the alleged theft to the authorities. Here's a chilling, one-sided conversation, which took place the night before the murders. You only hear Keith's voice because it was recorded by his own security system.
I need it. Give me the login, Paul. Give me the login, Paul. An hour or two. An hour or two, Paul. 7:30 o'clock.
Keith said he needed the login by 8 p.m. that night, but Paul never called him back. Prosecutors alleged that what he did instead was murder his brother and Keith's entire family, and they presented a timeline to the jury. First, surveillance footage of a shirtless Paul Caneiro at 1:27 a.m. walking up to a security camera in his garage and turning it off. They believed he did this so it wouldn't track his movements. But Paul's neighbor's camera captured what investigators believed were his headlights from his very distinctive Porsche traveling away from his home in Ocean Township at around 1:30 a.m., heading toward his brother's mansion 20 minutes away in Colts Neck. Security video at Keith's mansion showed a figure outside the garage. And then suddenly the power to the camera goes black.
Now, there was this area near the house. If you're facing the house, it would be all the way on the right side of the house, and it was surrounded by shrubs. Behind those shrubs was where the whole house generator was located. It was large, as well as the electrical meter. What investigators found when they arrived on scene was that the generator had been switched to the off position, and that the electrical meter had been physically removed and was lying on the ground. Keith Caneiro's body was not too far away in that same area, as were multiple bullets and shell casings.
It's believed that Paul cut the power to both the generator and the electrical meter, plunging Keith's home into darkness. And in an already unbelievably tragic case, the idea that even though Keith was so angry with his big brother for the betrayal of the theft and the stress of these businesses, it was to Paul that he last texted in the middle of the night, clearly worried that the power had mysteriously shut off at his house. He was looking for his big brother for comfort. At least that's what it seems, because based on the extraction of Paul's cell phone, Keith had texted him 4 times between 3:14 a.m. and 3:18 a.m. on November 20th. Here's what he wrote.
What is the time there?
3:14:58 a.m. My power is totally out at home. Total AC failure. At 11:20:2018, 3:15:01 a.m. UTC -5. And it's coming from Keith Caneiro.
And what does the content of that message say?
I used the manual switch in the basement, but nothing is working. 11:20:2018, 3:17:59 a.m. UTC -5 from Keith Caneiro, and the message was, I'm not even sure what to do. 11:20:2018, 3:18:13 a.m. UTC -5 from Keith Caneiro. The generator says AC failure. Going outside to see if the generator is in the right mode.
Basically, Paul lured his brother outside, where he was lying in wait by the generator. And when Keith came out, Paul executed his little brother. He fired 6 shots, 5 of which hit their target. The timing of Keith's murder would be backed up by a neighbor who lived 3.5 miles away and yet still heard the shots, which woke him up.
I heard gunshots that were very concerning, and that's what woke me up. I woke up, I heard the shots, and I said, someone just got whacked. Those are the words I said to myself. Those exact words.
Now, you didn't see anything, correct?
No, I was laying in bed.
Okay.
Said police, Operator Ward.
Hey, how are you today?
Hi.
Do you have hunting in the middle of the night in California?
No, you're not allowed to hunt anywhere in the middle of the night. Are you hearing gunshots?
I heard gunshots, yeah.
Okay, where are you? Let me send somebody to the area.
Falling and River's Edge.
Okay, you don't see anything, you just hear it?
I was in bed and clearly I heard bump, and then it's just clearly a gunshot.
Okay, absolutely. We'll send somebody right over to the area. And you said you can't see a car or anything that would be involved or anything like that, right? It's pretty dark.
Yeah.
Okay. What street are you on, just so we can get a reference point?
River's Edge.
You're on River's Edge.
I could face the River's Edge and Farms. So probably quite aware. Just when it seemed right.
And how many of them did you hear?
It was 5.
5.
And then 2 seconds, 8, and 1 more.
Okay, let me send somebody to where you're at there. Can I just get your name for my record?
Dennis Caporia.
Colts Neck patrol officers responded to the River Edge Drive, which was 3.5 miles away from Keith's house, and they were unable to locate the source of the gunshots.
But you didn't say to the 911 operator, like, I heard the shots, they sound a couple miles away, did you?
No.
Did they sound far away?
I heard them clearly.
Okay, so does that mean they sounded close?
Close enough that I heard them distinctively well.
Okay. Were you made aware that you're approximately 2 to 3 miles away from where this...
It could be, but again, you're in the dead of the night in Colts Neck, and where we live is very, very quiet. It was distinctive.
The thing is, in the movies, we've been trained to think that a silencer silences a gunshot into a pss, pss sound, something like that. But that's just movie magic. A suppressor, like the one found in the backpack recovered from Paul's wife's car, wouldn't completely silence a gun. It only muffles the explosion. The prosecution contended that after Paul murdered his brother, He then entered the house, shot and stabbed Jennifer, then hunted down and stabbed his nephew and then his niece. After that, he started the fire in the basement of the mansion. Then surveillance footage from security cameras captured what appeared to be Paul's Porsche traveling back home, where, before 5 a.m., he sets fire to his own home in the basement and tries to, at the same time, destroy evidence like his bloody jeans, and also to create a fictitious story that the Caneiro families were being targeted. And if you're wondering, it's diabolical that he would kill his brother and his brother's wife, but how could he kill the children? A trust attorney would testify that Paul and their youngest brother, Corey, were 50-50 beneficiaries of Keith's $3 million life insurance policy.
But assuming, because in order for him to benefit at all, they all have to be dead, correct?
That's correct.
It's the only way that Paul Caneiro can benefit is if Keith Caneiro's dead, right? Right?
Yes.
Jennifer's dead?
Yes.
Sophia's dead?
Yes.
And Jesse's dead?
Yes.
Only way it benefits.
Yes.
Now, you might be wondering what Paul's defense was. Paul's defense was to throw his little brother Corey under the bus. That he could be the real killer because he was also a beneficiary of the life insurance policy. And that investigators weren't thorough in their investigation because they didn't look into any other suspects or alternate theories. After a 20-day trial, on February 13th, 2026, the jury found Paul Caneiro guilty of all charges, including 4 counts of first-degree murder. He is scheduled to be sentenced in May of 2026. Up next on Criminal Mischief bonus content, here my co-host Brandon Morgan and I will discuss the case in more detail. And as always, thanks for listening. From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host.